The United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund recently reported that 5,500 children under the age of 5 die every day across the 21 countries of the region, and the majority of these deaths are largely preventable. Poverty in Africa is a well-known fact. Every day, more and more people die. Every year, millions, hundreds of millions of dollars are poured into Africa, yet Africa gets poorer and poorer. That's why today, my goal is to persuade you that we should do nothing. That's right, nothing. We should end our aid to Africa. Today I'll be showing you why the popular solution doesn't work. Then I'll be showing you what would solve the problems in Africa. And finally, I'll show you some practical ways that you can help. Foreign aid from Western governments is where the majority of the funds for Africa comes from. This aid is in the form of either food or money. In 2012, the United States gave nearly $12 billion in foreign aid to Africa. Now, if so much aid is poured into Africa, how come they're still so poor? To answer this question, we need to see what is done with the aid. The aid is given to the governments of the countries in Africa to be distributed to the people. At this point, the leaders and politicians of the country are stealing the aid. The Foundation for Economic Education reports multiple examples of this. The dictatorship of Ethiopia, a major recipient of donor funds, used funds to buy trucks for a resettlement scheme. Ethiopia also withheld famine relief from some of the most severely affected areas because it was in the best interest of the dictator to starve his opponents. Relief ships were also charged $50 per ton to unload their aid. But Ethiopia is not the only exception. The Congo also sold donated food and used the money to buy an arms factory in Italy. The more peaceful Mauritius took donated rice, insisted it was of the highest quality, and diverted it to tourist hotels. The President Mobutu of Zaire used donated funds to rack up a fortune in his Swiss bank account, estimated approximately $10 billion. Now, you might be thinking, this is bad, but I mean, it's still worth it, right? If some of the money is getting to the African people, it still should be done. Now, before we can really answer that question, we must see what the incentives of the leaders of the countries have. Well, everyone has an incentive to make your own lives better, and the leaders make millions, if not billions, off this aid. So, of course, they have an incentive to increase and continue that aid. Now, what gets them the aid? The poorer their countries are, the more aid they get. So the leaders of the countries have an incentive to keep their people poor. It's no wonder Africa is poorer than it was when the aid began. A study from the World Bank reports exactly what's happening. In the study, it says that higher aid levels erode the quality of governance. So when we petition our politicians to continue and add more foreign aid, we are harming and continuing the suffering of the people we are trying to help. Well, since foreign aid is obviously not the solution to Africa's problems, what would solve the problem? Now, poverty is a much debated and discussed issue, but in Africa it boils down to two things. Number one, they can't make money. Number two, they can't make enough money. And there are two reasons for this. Number one, they have no private property rights. Number two, regulations on businesses, well, don't allow businesses. Countries that have a high economy and a growing economy are countries that have high private property rights. And likewise, countries that have low private property rights have low economies. The International Property Rights Index reports that the majority of African countries are well below the average amount of property rights that countries have. Now, what does this mean? This means they can't own anything. They can't own land, they can't own shops. And if they try to expand and try to create wealth, the government will come in and take the land for any reason. Also, if they want to open a business, it can take years because they would have to get licenses from over 20 ministries, and they will have to bribe people. And in the end, it's not a guarantee. The government can still take their land for any reason. So until there is government reform in Africa, we will not see the African people getting any more wealthy and prosperous. 60 years ago, Hong Kong was poorer than the countries in Africa, but now it is rich and thriving. What happened? They must have received a lot of foreign aid, right? No. They were ruled by England. They were a province of England. And when England left, they were basically left with no government. The rules boiled down to don't hurt each other and don't take each other's stuff. It was the perfect environment because they had private property rights and they had simple government with no regulations. They flourished. They're one city and they don't have lots of natural resources like the United States, yet their success is comparable to the United States for their size. What we conclude from Hong Kong is that there is a solution for Africa's poverty and that it is possible and should be a model for these African countries. They should model after Hong Kong. Now, earlier in my speech, I said that we should do nothing. Let me clarify. I believe that we, as a people, through our government, should do nothing. But we as individuals should do something. I mean, God in the Bible commands us to help those who are in need. And the African people are in need. So let's look at some ways we can help. Number one, invest in renewables. And when I say renewables, I mean things like sheep, goats, and chickens, and also grains. Things that reproduce and will be able to affect the African people for generations and help them. Also, give directly to missionaries and charities. Reason being, they take out the middleman being the government. The government won't have any hand in or say in what happens to the money. It goes directly to the people who need it. Recently, our church raised $6,000 from some orphanages in Togo. The money went straight to the missionaries, and the missionaries took it to the people in Togo. This was able to feed them for an entire year, give them Christmas presents, and also to invest in some infrastructure and things like wells. This is the kind of thing that we need to be doing for the African people. Also, we can be a voice against foreign aid. We can contact our representatives and let our opinions be known. And in discussions and in our group settings, we can be against foreign aid, being a voice good. Now today, I hope I persuaded you that foreign aid is not the answer. Then I hope I've also shown you some practical ways that you can help. And finally, I've shown you that there is a solution for Africa's problems. If we stand together and be a voice against foreign aid, we will be able to, if we stop foreign aid to Africa, we will cut off the funding that is funding the government corruption, and Africa will have a brighter future. Thank you.